Welcome to this 10-minute lightning talk, Unearthing Historical Networks Using Neo4j and Archival Documents, an introduction to Archivelago, presented by Corey Clausen. You can start, Corey.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thanks for having me. I'm, in terms of an expert, maybe just getting started with Neo4j, but I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about how I how I came to it. So this project is sort of an outgrowth of my graduate studies, looking at archaeologic studies, archive studies, and queer studies, and looking at what they have in common. And what I eventually arrived at is um, the connectedness and the dispersion of those fields went hand in hand with um, the structures of Neo4j and its flexibility. So this is an exercise in looking back at the historical documents that exist, and connecting people through letters, through translations, and seeing what um, what networks emerge, how artists and writers uh, and composers all how they wrote to one another, how they influenced one another, and then how this sort of over the course of a century, the 19th century and 20th century, certain cultural centers emerged as people moved to urban communities and to cities like Paris. So, oh, that slide suddenly changed. But this is sort of a mock-up we've put together for grant applications. I didn't look at it with plugged into uh, into a big marker, but we hope for this project to eventually be public facing and to be an opportunity for the public to look at queer histories and folks and communities, but and utilizing Neo4j to do that, to offer opportunities for folks to explore histories, and in terms of the letters, the translations, the various kinds of flows that this information, this art uh, traveled the world. So we'll start with some similar projects that are out there. 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon sort of takes this approach of looking at letters and connections, and instead of Kevin Bacon, examining how in Elizabethan folks, 17th century folks, were connected through their letters and other items. Similar projects are done on the French Enlightenment, and also Black thinkers in the 19th and 20th century, including Caribbean poet, philosopher César. So, our process was first identifying the figures we'd look at, then locating the materials to parse. We'll get into why that's a little difficult in a second. In this phase, we're starting to enter the data into Neo4j, making decisions as to how we want to structure the data, labels versus properties, etc. Eventually, we'd like to adapt this, make it a tool for other folks, and for the public to explore history on a large level. And then we also hope to get funding, and as we scale up this project. So just a note on our sources, we're looking at works of literature, published letters, and translations, but also adaptations of one another's work. Someone might write a poem that becomes, or someone might adapt the life of a writer into a musical or an opera. That those types of things within queer communities sort of uh, talk are ways that we can measure the influence of one writer upon this historical lineage. Um, so when looking at archives, they are arbiters. They are enforcers of history. There are a lot of political questions that go into what gets archived. It's not. It takes resources. Also takes cultural capital. Who um, is a poet major enough to have their papers saved for centuries? And there's also an economy of it. You'll see here in the background how these surviving documents of writers are stored in at the NYU archives. So one way we have to access these documents without going and visiting the archives themselves and getting permission from literary estates is the public information found on a finding aid. Now, these finding aids are organized in various different ways. You'll have minimal content. You'll have a list of an outline of what papers exist, and it might be as little as the date, a person that they wrote to, and sometimes you don't even have a full name. So it is a process that can't be entirely computerized. Uh, then you have more detailed projects like the Walt Whitman Archive Online, where you have the information of what date, where it was written, and even annotations about who these people mentioned in these letters are. You'll see here on the right a letter from Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula later in life. Uh, a letter, Whitman responding to a fan letter at that age when he was younger. So some of our obstacles here are the politics, what survives, what we're allowed to talk about and quote. So and collections are all over the world. Someone might have a stack of papers from Whitman, or um, in one place, in another. So it's a project to collect these for a single author and put them together. That's what Whitman and all of Shriner Letters Online have done. These are there's not really a standard way of organizing them because they try to preserve how they were originally left by the author upon death in as much as possible. Finally, this is getting into how we've organized our project. You'll see certain properties, different types of relationships. We have romantic relationships, letters written to one another, translations done of one another's work, literary criticism of one another, and we've moved away from all of these being housed as properties of a given person or a given letter to adding more nodes, adding more labels. So you'll see here some of the outputs, letters to and from Walt Whitman that we've collected among queer writers. We've got documents pertaining to Whitman held by the Beinecke Library at Yale, which is a really significant source as far as queer writers and authors and their papers. They tend to buy a lot of these things. Letters between queer Roman Catholic writers. These nodes that connect them are the names of are how they are organized and named within a given repository. And finally, mentions of one of the more significant and foundational works in literature. You see people here mentioning Walt Whitman's Calamus to him in letters and to one another. We hope to consider some bigger questions like how race and gender are segregated within these communities. If we can quantify the centrality of certain figures, and if we can recover lost relationships through, say, token recognition, things like that. Finally, thank you for having me. Thank you to my partner, Andrew Pankratz at Sucre Blue Studios, who's been a fantastic technical resource, my professors who've encouraged and pushed this project in different directions, and organizers and audience. Thank you for your time. Here are my Hunger Games questions that hopefully aren't too technical.
I put a link.
Thank you. I missed that memo.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Corey? Very interesting project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just getting started in terms of organizing, and we hope to get off to a good start in the next year and present at a pretty significant digital humanities conference in July.
Cool. One more minute so people can enter their answers.
So as far as the data we are capturing and uploading, we haven't gotten it down to a science of, because of the consistency of these organizational schemes, we haven't gotten a satisfactory results in terms of parsing. So it's been a lot of hand entry at this point as we're sorting out the ways we want to organize the data, and then hopefully we can get it more mechanized as we go along.
Corey, somebody had a question. Is historical informatics a big field right now?
Yes, it's a pretty significant subfield in the general area of digital humanities, and it's sort of divided between historians and librarians. We would be nowhere without them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Corey, for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you all, and have a
Okay.
nice rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye.